Hey, welcome back to Left 4 Dead Garage. We're in part 4 of the El Camino. I almost got a little ahead of myself and didn't video what I'm about to video. Now, this is a shot in the dark. I could probably Google it, probably YouTube it, and could probably find out all I need to know without going through the pain and suffering of figuring this out myself. We've had Joe and I have had several discussions on the shifter. I've seen where people use low car cables. He doesn't want to do like a B&M or anything because, well, he wants to be able to ride 3 deep in this, and with a 3-year-old kid and a shifter in the middle, you know, it's right in the kid's way. No kid wants to ride with a shifter right there at their feet. So, what I've done, and I have no idea if this will work. Hopefully it does, because if not, you know, we'll have to actually go to YouTube and Google and who knows what. Alright, this is what we're looking at. This is the 4L60E shift arm that would originally go on there like so. And I was concerned about the shift linkage that I can't find now. Luckily, I thought this stuff was missing. It was in the car. And really the only thing I thought I might be able to use is this piece, because that's the one thing I was looking for. But thank goodness the whole entire shift linkage is in the car. So it sits in this little pivot area right there with that spring and that little Delrin bushing, and then the shift rod from the column goes into this, and then this side would go into like a double fork type thing. And as it does its number, then, you know, park reverse, neutral drive, blah, blah. All right, so I'm kind of eyeballing this thing. And I thought maybe if I got a Turbo 400 or something out there with the shift arm on it, I could use it. But I pulled this off, and I was looking at it. I'm like, well, what happens if I turn it around backwards? So, just kind of laid it up there backwards. If I can do this one-handed. We'll try to get that guy on there, up out of the way. All right. See where I'm kind of headed here? I hope you can see this. It'll stay. So that actually kind of sits in that little curve of that bracket if I flip it backwards. Now, keep in mind, nothing's tight here. So, just for, you know, S&Gs here, I thought, well, what if I had a piece of tubing that would lay in this radius and also fit the diameter of that that shift arm there. So, you know, since I'm a hoarder, everybody tells me I'm a hoarder, I go over here to the junk cabinet, open one box, pull out one piece of scrap tubing, and what do you know? So that one piece of scrap tubing fit right on that. Also, pretty much fits in that radius of that bend. So, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down just yet, flip the shift arm backwards, lay the tubing in there, tack weld the tubing in there, put it all back together, and let's see what happens. So, the only thing that concerns me, and I ran into this when I was reading something about the difference between the columns of square body Chevys, like a 700 R4 column versus a 3-speed column. The gate's different. I have no idea what this car had in it, if it was a 700 R4 or whatever, 200R or something. So the gate, if it's a 3-speed car, it may not go to first gear. It may not hold first gear. So, but back to using what you have, this is what we're going to try, and we'll just see what happens. So I'm going to get this that tubing welded to this bracket here, and we'll stick it all back together, and we'll see what happens together. All right, I got this kind of sort of stuck on there. I'll show you what we got. All right, this is from the column, like I said. Your frame mount, your spring that just keeps like a little tension on it or whatever. And then the flipped over shift arm, one little tack in the back. This is not tight yet, but I am going to snug it up before I attempt to put it in gear. All that does is go through this little doodad, and that bolt right there goes into this little solid piece and then pinches on that rod. But I'll set the camera up under the car and go put it in gear. That way I can come back and watch it and see what it's doing. You know, if something doesn't seem right, or if it binds, or if that thing breaks off because I only got one tack weld on it. But I guess we'll get to find this out together. So. Alright, well, that did not hold. Alright, well, clearly that was a fail. That racket in the background is my heater, because North Carolina has decided that it's winter again today. Yesterday it was spring, so sorry about the noise. I just don't feel like getting up and cutting it off. Round 2 on this thing. I don't know if this will work either, but hey, all we're doing is trying. So I repositioned a couple things. The shifter actually felt like it was in a massive bind even trying to do what it needed to do. Like I said, I don't know if this works because you know angles and whatnot change, and I have no idea what I'm doing, so we're just trying it. So what I've done is I put it all together, and then I welded the tubing to the arm while it was together. I backed this little shaft out as far as I could to try to get it to where it's pushing down on the arm. It seemed like it was so far up that, you know, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. Like it wasn't pushing down, it was pushing back more than it was down to try to rotate this. So hopefully I got a little more tack on it than I did. But like I said, it did feel like it was very hard to come out of park. So let's try this and see what happens.
Competition Products, your source for hardcore engine parts for street, strip, and oval track. Our free catalog is packed with hundreds of product lines from the best-known manufacturers in the performance industry. Lowest prices guaranteed. Free shipping and handling on all orders over $149 in the continental U.S. Need expert advice? Our knowledgeable staff is just a phone call away. Competition Product, race parts sold by racers since 1970.
Okay, I think this is version 3, maybe 4. At this point I can't remember. A lot of failure with this idea. I cut the post off, moved it down, kind of tacked it where it looked like it was in a neutral position, and then I pulled it all back apart and I put a really good weld on it. This is kind of the last ditch effort. It will either work or not, and it also helps if the shifter is in park. Yeah, this is probably version 5. Because if you don't have the shifter in park, then nothing else will be right. So let's see what happens if I try to go through the gears now. All right, it's cold in here. The camera battery kicked the bucket pretty quick, but it appears that everything's working right. So let's see if I can find the flashlight that I just had in my hand that I don't have any idea what I just did. Here it is. All right, let's take a look at this thing. Got your factory linkage right here. Rod coming down from the shifter. Now it is at the max amount of travel, which it may be a good idea to cut this main rod right here and maybe put a, you know, a 1/2 inch chunk of round stock in there just so you can get a little more bite on that. But this thing seems to work fine. Cut that rod off, sort of, you know, positioned everything freely right there, tacked it on, took it over to the bench and laid it to it. But let's see if we can see this thing in action. Alright, we're parked now. Should be rewind, and then feels like neutral. That should be drive, because it's got the drive lockout, or overdrive rather. So it's got a lockout, and then that's drive, second, and first. It's a little stiff. It could just need some, could just need a little sauce. I mean, it had 5 failures, but I figured it out. So you don't have to buy the cable, you don't have to do any of the other crazy stuff. I think what I'm gonna jump on now is plummeting the transcooler lines and getting those tidied out of the way. And then I'm gonna go back over these battery cables because I am just not happy with how they laid out over here. So I'm gonna do these piddly things and we'll grab the camera when I get back into something serious. But yeah, so far it's a win. Back down here on the El Camino, and the good news is that the headers showed up. Joe brought the headers by a couple days ago. I started putting them on yesterday, and well, the bad news is the new steering shaft wouldn't work, and that new modified shift linkage that I modified and had working also is in the way of the collector, and the rod from the column down to that doodad that I modified also hits the headers. So I took the Jeep shaft back off and was going to turn down this piece right here, but I don't know if you can see this or not, but that's only about an eighth, about 125 thousandths thick, and there's a rubber insulator or rubber isolator in there. I'll throw it on the floor. By the time I turned down enough to clear that header tube, well, wouldn't be too safe. I was going to go to the junkyard this morning and see if I can find half of another shaft to do away with that top U joint, just use one at, you know, down there near the rag joint. And then I got to looking at the factory shaft, and I cut that plastic sleeve off to just keep stuff from getting tangled. And we just put the factory shaft back on. So we're back to the factory shaft. It is really close up here, but it does clear. It may melt that boot a little bit, but I mean, at this point, what do you do? And I don't know if you can see, but right here is the arm on the column that runs the big rod that goes down to the frame mounted bracket and the shift linkage. So it had a big swoop in it and it hit the header. So what I did is, this was the big kick out, or something along those lines. Anyway, this was in there, so I just eliminated the kick out and added a straight piece in and welded it in. Looks like that's going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the car and hook it back up underneath the car and just go through the gears and see if we got this battle won. Then I'll pull apart what I made the other night and make some adjustments and try to win the battle. There may be a solution. All I have to do is Google it, but yeah, I guess I'm hard-headed on this one. I just want to figure it out. Unfortunately, Joe bought that steering shaft and we didn't need it, but with the other headers, it was a much needed item. I mean, that big joint up near the column was just so into the headers you couldn't even turn the car. So, but you know, one step forward, 18 back, but we're headed back for all. We got another new item. He picked that sweet crossmember up for $100, so if you watched these previous videos, you've seen the modifications we did to the factory crossmember to make it work with the 60E. So I'm gonna pull that back out. That's got exhaust, you know, cut out, so that'll make it so much better to run exhaust on this car. I'm gonna jump in here, get this linkage hooked up, and I'll let you know how it goes. All right, back on this thing before I get too far ahead and not do any video and recap. Transmission lines are plumbed and routed. Most of the fan wiring is done. I redid the battery cable setup, shortened the ground wire from the battery because I didn't like it. Got the fittings for the fuel rail and the cap and whatnot. What else have I done? Barking dogs in the background. What I had to take the radiator back out. It was a little, it had the ratchet and rewind still. And I don't know if you can see these, but these bolts that hold the fan to the fan, hold the fans to the shroud, are not like the bolts that hold the shroud to the radiator. There's not a nutsert in there or a thread set, whatever you're gonna call it. So therefore I ran the nut off the bolt that holds the shroud on, that holds the fan to the shroud that I was going to use for the ground wire to the fan, and I couldn't get it back in there. So I had to take everything apart, pull the shroud apart, blah, blah. What do you know? Fun times. I got the relays for the fan hid over here, 2 fuses, it routes down through loom, power supply from over there. I still have to jump into ignition. It's this pink wire here that would have originally went to the HEI will be my ignition because it's clearly ignition. And I'll still need, so I need ignition to the fuse box and to the relays, but I'll also need fuel pump. I have to finish wiring the fuel pump relay. So you got an ignition relay and a fuel pump relay. So this red wire goes to ignition. That's for the fuse box. That makes sense. So I don't know if it makes sense to me. Either way. So I have to plumb the O2s, finish that god-awful shift linkage situation. But that's where we're at. So I'm gonna hook up these fan wires. Yeah. Let me finish pulling these out. Fan 1, fan 2. I guess it doesn't really, well, fan 1 and fan 2, high fan and a low fan. You can program the PCM with HP tuners to tell when to cut on and when to cut off. They will also cut off at a certain mile per hour, whatever we choose that to be, probably above 55, because there's no sense in the fan running when you have all the airflow you could ever need. So, fan 1, fan 2. What else we got here? What I may do is I may have one, but I may run to O'Reilly's or Advance or somewhere and get like a 2-post little junction box, or what do you call that thing? Anyway, something I don't want to butt connect all this together. It'd be nice to have that pink wire that's not long enough to run over here and this red wire that's not long enough to run all the way over there, or vice versa, somewhere that you can do eyelets and not just one big nappy butt connected wad of 4 or 5 wires going to one. I rode to O'Reilly's. They did not have a little block I can put right here to jump the main ignition wires together, but I got a few other things I need from Amazon, so we will just try to get it from Amazon. Now I probably should have bought some connectors while I was standing there, but we'll make do somehow, some way. These crappy ones here. So I need a spade connector to jump back into this relay, and then also one right there. And I'll need a little dab of wire. I hope this is gonna be, this heavy gauge stuff here is all I got left of this. I didn't have any of that either. Yeah, that'll be plenty. So we don't need much. Actually, probably don't even need that much. That heavy of a gauge for what we're doing. Ah, deadly. This is crazy. No connectors. I need a female spade connector. All I have is male. I thought I had this covered. I don't need one insulated. I don't need one with the full covering on it, because it won't slide up in this relay holder. Well, the odds of getting this video out today is slim to none, because I'm not going back out. Dang it. I don't know where else to look. Well, I know I don't have any because I made 18 different jumper wires with these little connectors, and that's where they all went, so. Great. I do not feel like going back out. It's been a few days. I was waiting on some quality imported Amazon car parts. Did not exactly find what I was looking for, but this will do. I'm going to mount this right here on the old inner fender area. That way you can have a power supply stud. I would have rather this had one of those caps. I might be able to dig through my plastic cap collection and see if I can find something to push onto that. I just couldn't really find what I wanted. I don't know, I figured it'd be a little easier, and then it don't say made in China, but you know. I needed some female connectors, and this kind of had me covered in more ways than two, so I bought this whole setup here of just male and female wire connectors. With any luck, I still got to flash the darn PCM, and I still have to order credits from the tuning school. Shoot, should have done that earlier. Got the cooling system bled. If you've not done an LS, these things are can be finicky on bleeding the cooling system. The easiest thing I've found to do is just, if you're running the coolant through the throttle body, pop off one of the hoses and start feeling it. I mean, if you're popping the one off the radiator, you need to cap off the radiator part inside of the hose and let the bleed come through the throttle body. Or if you're not going through the throttle body, you got your steam ports underneath the intake. You can do it from there too, because it technically comes out of that into the throttle body back in here, or vice versa, one of the ways. But you need to bleed it from the highest possible part of the cooling system, and these funnels help too. It's still about that full of water. It's got 2 gallons of antifreeze in it. This thing's holding a good bit. But if any luck, and I need to Okay, I got 5 gallons of 93 in the Tacoma. I need to dump in here and pop that fuel line back off and let the line and all flush out, because there could be giblets of who knows what from cutting that fuel line. So we use this wheel to cut it with. So, but I gotta jump in here and steal some 12-volt constant from this little wire here. Probably can't see it, but it comes from the starter positive stud. And I'm just going to jump it into my fuel pump relay, or Joe's fuel pump relay. It ain't my fuel pump relay. But yeah, that's what we're doing. Oh, and then I got made my little spacers for this little fuse box here. It stands it off with harness it in a bind or anything. You may not be able to see that. More than likely for the time being, well, I got to program the PCM anyway, so we'll just go ahead and turn the fans on. Really imagine that camera is probably picking up that leaf blower in a spectacular way. All right. All right. I thought I was ready, but I forgot about the O2 sensors, and that was a slight ordeal. I've probably been monkeying with that for about an hour. With this goofy harness, that side from the harness to the sensor was long enough. This side was nowhere near it. I got to pulling around, tugging on stuff, and ended up pulling the wires out of the injector harness, adapter harness. I had to fix that. Had to extend the O2 wires. I did find O2s. I can't remember if I told you that, because I got a box of used ones over there from these trucks I used to part out. I thought the collector extension had O2s in them. They did not. I had to find, well, there was one. It came with one O2 bung. I don't know why it wouldn't come with two. So I knew I'd bought some, and I found the others that I had bought for whatever reason. I think my wideband. I got a handheld wideband. So I had to weld bungs in adapters and then find bolts. I had to weld bungs in collector extensions, and then it took really, really long bolts, because these are ball flange headers, not the regular blow out the paper gasket type header. I flushed the fuel line out. Got about maybe a half a cord out of it. That should be all right. I flashed the computer. Basically all I did is I bumped the idle up to 800 across the board, and I turned off the VATs, the EVAP, the EGR, the rear O2s, several other things that I turned off. I can try to video the computer and kind of show you that maybe. The only thing I wish I could get my hand down in there and put my bump switch on the starter. I can't get my hand in there. And then as I was putting the O2s in, I realized that all the wires from the car harness to the starter are massively close to the header. So I may have to pull the header back off and maybe put some heat sleeve on that, or try to, I don't know, tuck it up in there. It is just way too snug, too close for comfort. What else? So as of where we sit right now, we're gonna try to fire it. I'm gonna plug the laptop up. When and if it does fire off, I should be able to use the VCM, the scanner, fuel pump sounds pretty healthy. Let me see if the fuel gauge works. Pretty sure it does. I put about 3 gallons of gas in it yesterday. All right, start scanning, gathering. Let me get the GoPro. This is your VCM scanner for HP tuners. It's got a bunch of, I don't have a touchscreen laptop, but hopefully we can get this thing to kick off and at least, you know, force it to idle. So let's see what will happen. It's trying, but I don't understand. It's almost like it ain't fueling because I don't smell anything. I don't think I have anything decent to shoot in there. Carb cleaner. Almost like I don't have injectors firing. That header tube's warm. That fuel rail's leaking. I got two tubes that are warm. All right, I may have to find a way to try to cram my hand down in there and get my bump switch on it. Probably should go get my battery charger. We definitely got fuel at the rail. That was a lot more exciting. Fuel. That's what it acts like. This rail's definitely leaking on this end cap, so that thing's got to come back out. The dogs are going insane. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this video right here. There's already, like, as of last night, I checked, like 40 minutes of pretty much all fails. I'm on the second fuel rail, the second set of injectors, after another hung wide open in the second set I put on the car. Went and got a third set and stole one out of that. Hooked the rail up, flipped it upside down, and made sure that nothing was leaking. The last injector, you can actually, pretty sure this is it, you can actually blow through this thing. So, which it filled number 7 slap full of fuel, running out the header. The first time it was it filled number 8 slap full of fuel. First time it was number 2 that was full of fuel. I also believe I'm battling a crank sensor issue, which you noticed in the big backfire through the intake. I feel like I've got 2 problems, or I may have got one fixed, but I robbed a crank sensor out of, because I didn't have RPM. I had no RPM signal at the end. Or at one point I had no RPM signal. So I'm not sure what the deal with that was. And it's popping and banging when it shouldn't, and it's actually scared me to death about this cylinder being full of gas or fuel, whatever. That's how connecting rods bend. So, oh, and I also broke the starter. Let me show you that. This smooth broke the ear off the starter. This little small ear goes right there on one of those kickbacks. It's a brand new starter, unfortunately. I robbed one off another motor I had. I probably got, I'm pretty sure I've got a couple of junk starters, and I may just strip this one down, change the casting out, so Joe will have, you know, a new starter again. Since he had this one, he actually had to rebuild, so it's a fresh refurb. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So I'm going to end it here, and then jump right back into changing this crank sensor and praying to the hot rod gods that this thing is okay and it fires up and runs. So but thanks for watching Left 4 Dead Garage, and hopefully the next time I see you, it won't be a total disaster.